As far as I know, every civilization that has experienced prosperity has had a decline in population. There may be a few exceptions. Perhaps people can enlighten me. I'll look at the comments on this interview to see perhaps what I can learn. But it seems that from what I've read, almost every civilization, when they become prosperous, their birth rate drops.
The birth rate is very low in almost every country. And it's something, unless that changes, civilization will disappear. America had the lowest birth rate, I believe, ever. That was last year. Places like Korea, the birth rate is 1/3 replacement rate. So that means in 3 generations, Korea will be 3 or 4% of its current size.
What if prosperity is not our greatest achievement, but our downfall? Every civilization that reached the heights of wealth and comfort eventually collapsed. Not from war, not from famine, but from within. Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk are warning us that the very thing we celebrate, progress, abundance, freedom from struggle, might be the silent killer of our future. Because when life becomes too easy, people stop fighting for tomorrow. They stop having children. And the civilization that once conquered the world forgets how to survive it.
I think that's the consequences of the emergence of something like a non-punished hedonistic egocentrism.
Well, obviously, there's certainly many examples of civilizations that become prosperous. There is generally a trend towards hedonism.
Yeah, well, you can get away with it if you're wealthy, eh? Because the consequences of your foolishness don't smack you on the head instantly.
Precisely. So, if you're a civilization under threat, like let's say if you take, say, Rome, when they were trying to not get annihilated by Carthage, and they had Hannibal running around marauding Italy, they didn't have time for hedonism.
Right.
Hedonism is not an option. We're going to get destroyed by Hannibal.
The chips are down.
And when a civilization's under stress, there's very little hedonism that takes place.
William James said that the modern world needed a moral equivalent to war, right? He investigated the religious realm very, very deeply. And I think this was in the varieties of religious experience. And that really had an effect on me, because I think that you need something akin to an existential threat in order to set you straight.
I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like let's say if it's a spoiled child that that kid gets everything he or she wants, and you have sort of a Baruch assault.
Yeah.
And then writ large, that is a civilization that is
I think it's also
where people get everything they want.
I think it's the right way to think about it developmentally and neuropsychologically, because maturation itself consists of 2 processes, let's say. The more mature I am, the more I'm bringing other people into the purview of my vision. So I extend myself across other people, be my family first, but then brought the community more broadly.
Sure.
The better you are at that, the more people you can play a game with at the same time. But you also do the same thing with the future. And that's actually, as far as I can tell, what the cortex is for. It's to move you away from primordial hedonistic motivation to this more inclusive sense of future and community, right? And that's a higher order self.
Yeah.
And so the default would be immaturity, and wealth can obviously facilitate that. And maybe it's partly because, so you're a very wealthy man. You could give your children anything they ever asked for. Okay, so why not do it? Why not every time they ask for something, why not just deliver it?
There's some wisdom that comes through the ages that you don't want to have someone be a spoiled brat.
And why do you think giving people everything they want exactly when they want it necessarily produces that? Because it seems to.
I think it almost always is.
Okay, you had a rough childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, like rough and tumble, rough childhood. Plenty of fights, and a father who was a difficult creature to contend with. Okay, what did that do for you? And are you grateful for it, or are you unhappy about it?
My name is Errol Graham Musk. I'm Elon's father.
Well, I guess you never know the things that really made you who you are today. So at the end of the day, am I on net grateful for my life? I am. And perhaps even for the hard things. Because those hard things, I learned from them.
What did you learn? I read your biography.
It's not an autobiography.
No, it's not. No, definitely not.
I would tell it in a different way than Isaacson, because Isaacson, who I think is an excellent biographer, is nonetheless looking at things through his lens. and wasn't there at the time.
Right, of course, of course.
My relationship with Elon is very much the same as my relationship I had with my father. We mostly communicate on email. I haven't spoken to them for quite a long time. South Africa was a bit of a rapscallion setup, you know. Getting knocked about was pretty normal. I mean, if you did well at school, they would wait for you at the exit of the school and pommel you with their bags. So, I mean, if you call that bullying, we had a lot of that.
Well, one of the things that stood out for me too, though, from that, and I would like your comments about this, was the rough details of your childhood. A lot of physical altercations and a lot of, I don't know exactly how to characterize.
Altercations. I mean, I was almost beaten to death within an inch of my life at one point.
Right, that counts.
Yeah.
That definitely counts as a
wasn't
physical
just,
altercation.
a few blows here and there. Yeah.
I do know that you were bullied at school and had a difficult...
I was almost beaten to death, if you'd call that bullied.
He was shy and awkward at school. Elon didn't have many friends.
Pupils at Elon's school saw him as strange, and he was systematically bullied for years. Elon was pushed down a flight of stairs and beaten violently, leaving him in hospital for weeks.
It's no surprise then that as an adult, he's a fighter, determined to succeed and prove everyone wrong.
Okay, one is the striving for power, and the other is the untrammeled, what would you call it? The untrammeled dominion of hedonism, and especially on the sexual gratification side. So it's like, if there's no ultimate unity that's future and community oriented, that's predicated on sacrifice, you get a dissolution immediately into the next two contenders for domination. And one is, it's about me, buddy, and get the hell out of the way. And aligned with that is, not only is it about me, it's about me, what would you say, subjugated to my most base whims, because why would I want power except to do exactly what the hell I want whenever I want to? And so part of the problem with the idea of people like Dawkins, so Dawkins and the atheists presume that...
I've had many conversations with Dawkins over the years.
You have, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we're going to do a podcast together,
okay,
which I'm very looking forward to.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious about this issue, because his idea, and it's kind of an Enlightenment idea, is that we dispensed with the idiot superstition of the past, then everyone would become, Baconian rationalists. And that seems,
Unfortunately not.
No, well, what seems to me to happen much more likely is that power and hedonism rise to take the place of what was holy, so to speak. And Nietzsche warned about that when he proclaimed the death of God to begin with. He thought nihilism would also enter the realm, right? Sure. Nihilism, power, and hedonism as the triumvirate of replacement gods. And so I've been trying to puzzle out in this new book the way the biblical corpus is conceptualizing what's properly placed in the highest place. And it does. That's part of the reason I was asking you about the natalist issue, because you figured out 20 years ago, that's a long time before anybody had been talking about
longer.
this.
Yeah.
But and then you also did publicly proclaim it at a time when the moral insistence was all on the side of, Jane Goodall's pronouncements that if we don't reduce the population of the planet dramatically, that the nature goddess is going to be upset, which is also a very, very old idea, not a very good one. So I'm very curious about your intuition there. Like, that's a long time ago. And so how did you cotton on to the fact that antagonistic attitude towards birth that's embedded in our culture now was something that should be called out and that was pathological?
Durant makes this very clear, because he's looked at one civilization after another, and they all went through the same cycle. When the civilization was under stress, the birth rate was high. But as soon as there were no external enemies, or they had a extended period of prosperity, the birth rate inevitably dropped. Every time. I don't believe there's a single exception.
Musk points out that America's birth rate just hit its lowest point in history, while South Korea's fertility rate has dropped to 1/3 of replacement. In just 3 generations, Korea could shrink to less than 5% of its current population. This isn't just numbers, it's a warning. The fall of Rome didn't come overnight. It came when comfort replaced duty, when indulgence replaced discipline. Peterson calls it non-punished hedonistic egoentrism. When you remove struggle, you remove the very condition that shapes maturity. Maybe this isn't just about falling birth rates. Maybe it's about the death of purpose. When nations stop believing in something greater than themselves, children, God, legacy, or progress, they turn inward, they consume, they decay. So the real question is this: can a civilization built on pleasure rediscover the virtue of sacrifice? Can prosperity coexist with meaning? Or are we destined, like Rome and every great empire before us, to vanish, not in flames but in comfort?